Alright guys, so if you were in our morning meeting this morning, we went over this set already, but I wanted to go over it again here for our paganism cards so that you had to go back and look on and just kind of refresh if you need to, because I know sometimes that early in the morning my brain doesn't always process things and remember them, and so that way you guys have it for this. So paganism, you guys, as we talked about this morning, is a little bit of a different religion than the ones we've talked about so far. So far we've talked about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And those religions all have a set of rules, they all have a deity, and we're going to continue with that with paganism and kind of looking at maybe some of the differences as well. And we're going to continue looking at some other religions later this semester as well. So, paganism, you guys. The card I have for paganism is this guy. And this guy has Stonehenge, which we talked about a little bit this morning, is a really cool big circle of rocks, as someone said, that are set up in a specific way and in a specific spot that has to do with how the earth and sun and seasons work, and they've been there for a very, very long time. So paganism is a religion or a belief system that includes a really wide variety of beliefs. So we talked about with Christianity how there's different denominations, and with Judaism how there's different groups that believe different things, like Orthodox Jews. And then even within Islam, there are different groups that believe slightly different things. That is true for most religions. However, paganism takes it kind of a step further for the wide variety of beliefs and spiritual traditions, and it is a little bit different even within that. And we'll see that as we go along. So, some people use the term paganism to describe the religion of their culture or cultures before other larger world religions became known to their ancestors. As with everything with paganism, you guys, when I say some or most or many pagans believe, it's a common belief that's held across the group, kind of like how we talked with our other religions where things might differ here and there. Paganism especially has those differences, and what we're talking about here is commonly held beliefs, but not all pagans are always going to believe in each thing that we're talking about here, and or the degree that they believe in it might vary. So other people have identified paganism as a modern practice that pulls beliefs and practices from a whole bunch of different belief systems and kind of throws them in a pot and like makes it their own. So a pagan is a person who agrees with and who practices, in often cases, one or more parts of this pagan philosophy that we're talking about. The specific belief system and practices that entails for that person varies by individual, from person to person. So that's where the idea of personal responsibility is really important or really fundamental to paganism. So it's the personal responsibility is the idea that you and you alone are in charge of your actions, good and bad. So in paganism, each person as an individual gets to decide to change to be the type of person that they want to be, and only that person can truly like make themselves who they want to be and can make that change. No one else is like gonna do it for you. And it also means that individual is the one who gets to decide what they believe. There is no big group of pagans or no one deity that's in charge of others who have a final say of what is right and wrong for pagans. So each person is an individual and gets to choose their path, whether it be good or bad, and they get to decide. Which is a really big factor for paganism, which is a little bit different than the religions that we've talked about so far, where there's often groups or leaders that kind of get to tell others the common beliefs that they've studied, like rabbis in Judaism know a lot about it and they can tell other people about what the religion believes. Pastors and priests in Christianity, and Catholic Christianity, there's the Pope that kind of gets to make all the rules, and above that are their deities. For pagans, it is pretty different. It's really that idea of personal responsibility, which then, sorry, I didn't show you my card for paganism. I chose all the people. Then we get to the idea of spiritual diversity, which I picked this for because in the center we have one thing and there's a whole bunch of different areas branching out of it. So spiritual diversity, you guys, is that term that we'll use to describe the idea that pagans have no true path. There's no, this is what you have to do, it's the only right way, like you do it this way or you're not a pagan. So for pagans, as long as what you're practicing harms no one and nothing, then you're free to believe it. It's fine. That's also true of how they view other religions. But it's also, so as long as what you believe for your religion doesn't hurt anybody, then pagans are cool with it. And they also believe that within the variety of beliefs within paganism itself, which we'll get to a little bit more as I go along. But you guys have heard a little bit of different pantheons of gods. So pantheons are groups of gods that are associated with a culture or a language or a group of people. So there's the Greek pantheon, which are the Greek gods and goddesses like Zeus, Artemis, Aphrodite, Hermes, Hades. I'm not going to continue. There's a lot. There's the Roman pantheon. There's Celtic pantheon. There's the Egyptian pantheon. There's a whole bunch of different sets of deities or gods and goddesses or important figures that people's groups have believed in around the world throughout time. And some pagans choose to believe in and worship those different pantheons. So one person who is a pagan could believe in the Greek pantheon and worship those gods. And another person could believe in the Celtic deities. And another could also just believe in the no deities, which we'll get to what a deity is in a moment. But instead just the workings of animism in the universe, which we will also define in a moment. So according to pagan belief, even though all of those people believe in very different things, none of them would be wrong. So none of them are incorrect. And they can still all practice paganism despite the fact that they believe such different things, because it falls under that umbrella of what paganism is, which is very different from what we've talked about so far for religions. Now to get into some of those terms that I just used, because some of them are words you guys aren't familiar with. So deity is one of them. So for you guys, I chose this picture. We don't always know what people in the past believed, because they're not here to be like, yes, I made this statue for this reason and this is what I did. But this is a statue from long way back, and we believe, although we're not sure, that it is an early attempt at making a statue of a deity that people group believed in. So deity, spelled D-E-I-T-Y, is another word for a god, a goddess, or some other form of supreme being. So for paganism, deity can mean that a person believes that the gods, goddesses, or other deity they worship has full control of the universe. They can also believe maybe that that deity has some ways to influence what happens in the universe as a whole, but they don't have like that total control that we've seen in our other religions so far. And some pagans don't believe in any deity. They don't believe in any god, goddess, or like other supreme being. They just believe in the interconnectedness of the universe, and that everything is kind of connected together. And as we said before, for paganism, even if they believe the different things there, none of them are technically wrong, and they all are still qualify as paganism. So we talked about those different pantheons. And so whenever a religion or a person believes in more than one god, it is known as polytheism. So I have the Egyptian pantheon here, part of them. So each of these is a different god or goddess that ancient Egyptians and some Egyptians and peoples today still believe in. So polytheism is the practice of believing in or worshiping more than one deity. So the three religions we've talked about so far have only had one deity, or one, in this case it was a god, for all of them. So for Islam, that was Allah. For Christianity and Judaism, that was Yahweh. And it was one god. So that is called monotheism, believing in one god. Polytheism is believing in more than one. So some pagans believe in more than one deity, some believe in one god or goddess, and some believe in no specific deity, but look to the universe as a whole. But for those that believe in polytheism, there is more than one. I also talked to you guys about animism a second ago, which is an interesting word, spelled like that. And I've got some ferns there. Animism. So animism is a belief that a lot of pagans believe in, again, not necessarily all, but it's the idea that objects, places, creatures, etc. all contain a spiritual essence. That in some way, all of those things are in some way alive or aware. As I said in our meeting, that doesn't mean that my rock here can like talk to me, but that in some way it is connected to or aware of kind of where its place is in the universe, what's happening around it, and the variance of that belief does kind of change. We talked about this morning how there are some people groups that believe, or pagans that believe that like plants themselves have like a soul, and how that might affect like their eating habits. For if you believe everything is connected, how does that affect like what you can eat and stuff? And for some people that means they choose not to eat certain things, and others that means that they're fine with whatever, and in other cases they might just be very respectful of what they're eating and make sure that they're not wasting things or doing things in excess, and being thankful for what they have there, for what's been given to them to use and to eat. So that is animism. And like I said, you guys, it does vary from person to person how much awareness or consciousness or connection they believe that each thing has to each other. All right, our next one is interconnectedness, which I found these awesome spider webs for. I was really proud of that. They're all connected together. So many pagans believe in the interconnectedness of the universe. And that means that everything is kind of connected together in some way, kind of like our spider webs here. So that means that even the smallest atoms, like what we talked about for our physical science earlier this year, and those small parts that make them up, the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, and even what makes up the protons, neutrons, and electrons, are connected, kind of like our spider webs. That nothing in the universe also begins as being bad or flawed, and that everything in the universe works together for the good of the universe as a whole, kind of like a team. So the idea of interconnectedness really ties in with the idea of animism we had before, where everything kind of is somewhat conscious or somewhat aware. Everything is also connected together. Kind of like how a spider on its web, if something is in one part of the web or doing something, it can feel the vibrations throughout the whole web. Everything is connected and acts kind of together. So that really ties together that being part of a whole and being able to work together with it. So, interconnectedness. The last card that we went over for today, you guys, was... Oh, I lied. I was off a card. Nature. We'll come back to that one. So, nature, you guys, is the observation or looking at the natural world around you and around people and finding divinity or finding meaning in nature. And that's really important to a lot of pagans. So that means that people who identify as pagan often follow the seasons and focus on the earth for many of their beliefs about what is important and how the universe works. And we're going to talk more about that in a second or in tomorrow's morning meeting. But yeah. So, thank you guys for working with me so far. I forgot to show you guys the card for personal responsibility, but it's a person who kind of has a compass inside of them, and they're kind of deciding what is important to them, which ties back to the idea of pagans getting to choose what is important to them and how they believe things, which each person gets to do. How it works within the religion of paganism is a little bit different, though. So, I've liked going through this with you guys so far, and I'm excited to keep doing more with you guys tomorrow and in later videos.